So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I think this is an opportunity, and we've talked about the fact that the 21 season is an opportunity to really jump into the offense, change philosophy, et cetera. It's just it's good timing with the schedule, with the talent turnover, with the schedule in 22. I mean, just a myriad of reasons, right? I think that it's also a perfect opportunity for Tommy Rees to 100% take over that quarterback room.
100%.
I realize he's the quarterback's coach. I get it. But when you and I go to practice, when we were allowed, it's not just Tommy Rees talking to the quarterback. Right. And I think when you've got when you've got two different people in your ear.
And it was three until this year.
Good point with Elko. I'm sorry, with Chip Long.
Chip Long and Mike Denbrock. Mike Denbrock wasn't the quarterback's coach either.
Good point. So when you've got all these different voices in your ear, especially with young quarterbacks, I think that confusion can happen. I think that hesitancy can happen because you're not wanting to make mistakes, et cetera. Now you almost get like a do-over. You got a grad transfer who's never been in the room. You've got two young quarterbacks who've been in the room, but they weren't the focus of the room at all.
Brian Kelly hasn't been working with them. It's only been Tommy Rees.
It was Ian Book, and that's it. I just think that this is an opportunity. And you've got an incoming freshman, obviously, Tyler Buckner.
He's pretty good.
Yeah. But I think this is an opportunity where they get one voice at all times. He's the quarterback's coach. He's the offensive coordinator. And if he gets the reins of the offense, he's the only voice that these guys are going to be able to hear. I don't see how that could be a bad thing.
I think that's, you had asked earlier about things that I would do if I was Brian Kelly. That's the second thing I would do. Is the big picture is you give the offense complete control to Tommy Rees and his staff. Because I think that he has a veteran offensive line coach that knows what Brian Kelly likes to do. You have a veteran tight ends coach who's been an offensive coordinator at the college level, has coached in the NFL. You have a running backs coach who's been in the NFL, has been some very successful college programs. And you have this smart young coach, so let him take over. But the most important thing is allowing him to be the only voice that the quarterback's hear. Because here's some things I've gathered over the years, talking to different sources. There will be times, and this has been true, where the offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach will say things to the quarterback. And this was true with Ian. This was true with Everett. This was true with Deshaun and from Malik Zaire, right? I've heard this about all of them. So, and I'm assuming that that's, been something that's been true the whole year. Is they'll say something to the quarterback, and then Brian Kelly will step in and say something completely different.
It's not helpful.
It's not helpful at all. But then what do you do as the coordinator? You either tell the kid, no, don't listen to the head coach, which you can't do.
Can't really do that.
Or B, you say, okay, well, we got to change it now. And then now you've undermined the authority of your quarterback's coach or your offensive coordinator.
Yes.
And now you've got to kind of change gears on something that you didn't necessarily want to do because the head coach stepped in and said it.
Right.
And so in order to prevent that from happening, Brian Kelly needs to take a step back. And like you said, Brian Kelly talks to the quarterbacks a lot in practice. And anyone that watches a Notre Dame game knows the first voice that the quarterback hears when he gets off the field after every single series is Brian Kelly's.
Right. And part of that's because Tommy Rees is up in the booth.
Well, that was true before as well.
Even if he wasn't, it would still be the first voice.
That was true before as well.
Yeah. Which, by the way, let me just interject here. I'm okay with the head coach being the first voice that you hear when you come off, as long as it's the same terminology, it's the same message that you're going to be getting from the quarterback's coach / offensive coordinator, whatever the makeup is. I'm fine. Look, the buck stops with the head coach. You should meet the head coach first thing. I have no problem with that. It's when it's a conflicting message. That's when I have an issue.
So I don't have a problem with it because the head coach can do whatever he wants. But to your, when you watch an Alabama game, Nick Saban's constantly saying something to the quarterback as he's walking off the field.
Right.
But I guarantee it's more big picture stuff. Hey, exactly. You got to make better decisions than that. Hey, I need you to calm down. I need you to, you got to make sure you're making those right progressions or whatever. That's not what's happening at Notre Dame from the source. And this isn't my opinion. Okay, this is not my opinion. This is what I've been told time and time again from people associated with all types of different parts of the football team, right? So this is not like, oh, I talked to Ian Book's dad, and he said Ian Book's dad, first of all, would never talk to me, right? But second of all, I try not to say things like this that I'm getting from the team if I get it from like one source, because then you never know like what's the agenda. This is something I've heard time and time again from all types of different people.
Right.
And the problem is, to your point, when the coach is trying to then talk scheme or decision or read, I've been told there's times when in games when the quarterbacks, the coaches will make a play call, or they'll come up with something, on the sideline, and they'll say, hey, look, this is what you need to do. You need to make this read. And Brian Kelly will say, like, throw it to so-and-so. Just completely undermine what they said and tell the quarterback who to throw the ball to.
It's not a read.
That's the whole point. You don't know who the heck, you don't know what the defense is going to do. Now, it's one thing to kind of like, say it as like, we're about, hey, look, we know that they're in cover one this series. We're going to run this, and we're doing it to hit this guy. That's not really what was happening. It was more of he just thought he knew where the ball should go. And it just, that's not something that should happen very often. And it definitely shouldn't happen very often from a coach who's not as involved in the offense on the day-to-day as he was back when he was the one calling plays. Because, again, I've said Brian Kelly needs to go back to his roots. Either take the offense back over and go back to the guy you were, or give it up. But still, the philosophy is what needs to change. And if you're going to be the head coach that's doing all these different things that are distracting you from the day-to-day, that's fine. I mean, I get it. There's nothing wrong with that.
You're the Notre Dame head coach. There's going to be stuff that's going to
distract you. But you hired this guy that you think is really smart.
Right.
You hired this guy that you think is a future star in coaching. Let him flip and coach, right? Like, let him be the voice in the room. Because what you do when you do that is then you sort of undermine his authority as a coach.
Right.
And
cutting the legs out from under.
Right. And so he needs to, and I don't know how possible this is going to be for Brian Kelly, who's a bit of a control freak, but I mean, he needs to do it, because let's be honest, Brian Kelly cares a lot about his legacy.
Big time.
Imagine if
today, I mean,
right,
what it is.
Now, there's two ways to look at that. One is to kind of have your hands in everything, and then, everyone say, oh, look how smart he is. Or B is, you hire coaches to do a job, and guess what? You're going to get a lot of credit for it, And if Tommy Rees turns this offense into an elite offense, Brian Kelly can be like, haha, look how smart I am. Nobody thought I should hire this 28-year-old.
Yep.
Blah, 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 blah.
But you got to let him do it.